Look, I'm pretty sure most of you are probably set in your ways when it comes to your loadout. However, we are going to be reviewing literally every weapon on this list. And it's because in the final shape, these weapons are retroactively going to have the ability to turn their current traits into enhanced traits, which is going to make some of these absolute monsters, which is why today we're going to be looking at the Title SMG. I know Guardian Games is on its way out. Tomorrow it'll be gone, but I just wanted to bring some notice to this little SMG that we've been using. It deals void damage. It's in the aggressive frame archetype. And if you're a big fan of archetypes like the Aztecross SMG or even Immortal, then you'll feel right at home with the Title. Now, stat-wise, when we compare it to those SMGs though, the Title does fall behind pretty much in every category outside of Zoom. And since Zoom is decoupled from range, stat-wise, there's just not a lot going here. And I would actually say for my PvP players, you may want to look elsewhere for an SMG. The focus that I'm going to be taking today though is going to be for my PvE players, because this year's version of the Title has got some juicy combinations. First up in our third column, we have Repulsor Brace, Pugilist, Perpetual Motion, Dynamic Sway Reduction, Threat Detector, Grave Robber, and Attrition Orbs. In our fourth column, we have Swashbuckler, Destabilizing Rounds, Rangefinder, Deconstruct, Collective Action, Surrounded, and Vorpal. Now there's some overlap with previous Title roles, right? But the main one that really jumped out to us was Repulsor Brace and Destabilizing Rounds. This is to take full advantage of our Void Synergy. Now this is not a rare combination. We've actually seen this before. Age of Bond has it, Word of Crota has it, but this is the first SMG that can get both of these perks together. And Destabilizing Rounds reads that final blows cause nearby targets to become volatile. Now this works different than how Volatile Round works from things like Gerfalcon's Harboring, as well as working differently from things like Volatile Flow and Echo of Instability, which were old artifact mods. The difference here is that with Destabilizing Rounds, once you get a kill, the enemy will cause a void explosion, which then spreads volatile to nearby targets. And there's a small cooldown, which makes sense considering this is pretty much on demand with no investment needed. Now, since this is just a straight volatile debuff, this cannot do things like stun barrier champions, since that is specifically reserved for things like volatile rounds. But this perk pairs beautifully with Repulsor Brace, which reads, defeating a void debuff target grants an overshield. So since volatile is a void debuff, every time you're applying volatile and you kill an enemy affected by volatile, you're also granting yourself a void overshield, giving you that 45 HP for 8 seconds. And this is so free, guys. You don't need to build into void to achieve this, and you don't even need to be on a void subclass. But keep in mind, this role isn't even in its final form. The best thing about all this is that in the final shape, we'll be able to enhance these traits. Now, enhanced Destabilizing Rounds reduces the cooldown between activations, meaning you can cause volatile more often. The enhanced Repulsor Brace extends the duration of our void overshield from 8 seconds to now 10 seconds. Now, this has been my favorite personal god roll for the time, and one that I would recommend to some of you. And again, this gets even more potent when you lean into Void 3.0. It's unique synergy, guys, and I think in things like the coil and stuff, and even the upcoming Into the Light Horde mode that we're getting in April, a role like this would be fantastic considering how consolidated enemies are, giving you multiple opportunities to apply volatile on kills while also keeping that survivability up, which is going to be so key in that activity. Now, what about other traits that are found on the Title? We've got things like Swashbuckler, which gives you that increase in damage from melee kills and kills with the weapon, and this can stack up to 5 times, granting us a 33.3% damage buff for 4.5 seconds. And of course, you can get that immediate 5 stacks with a melee final blow. And if you were to get the enhanced version of this trait, this would increase that duration to 6.5 seconds. Now, the reason why I bring up Swashbuckler here is because in that third trait column, we have Pugilist, where final blows with the weapon generate melee energy, and dealing melee damage briefly improves the weapon's handling. Now, each weapon final blow is going to grant 10% melee ability energy, and dealing melee damage will grant 35 handling for 3 seconds. Now, the enhanced version of Pugilist doesn't really improve things that drastically. We're looking at 11% melee energy back on each kill versus the 10%. The reason why this is so good though is that if you are rocking a melee focused build, this is a great way to net yourself more melee energy. Perhaps you're doing Peregrine Greaves and you're running around getting shoulder charge. Again, I'm kind of thinking of the Into the Light update. I'm thinking of this horde mode. I'm trying to find ways to give my abilities as much uptime as possible. But you can imagine going in, getting a shoulder charge kill off on an enemy, proccing Swashbuckler times 5, and then getting kills with Pugilist being procced. There's some synergy here. Now we also have Collective Action. This gives us a 20% damage buff for 7 seconds when collecting an elemental pickup. With the enhanced version of this, you're going to be able to increase your duration. Surrounded is also present here, which gives us a whopping 40% damage bonus when you're within 8 meters of 3 or more enemies, and the enhanced version kicks us up to 47%. This is substantial, guys. Again, though, you gotta kind of be necessarily in the ball stack of your enemies, but it is a nice buff. Then we have Deconstruct. Deconstruct is actually a perk many of you have been bringing up before, and we've net ourselves a few roles that are pretty interesting with Deconstruct. It reads that dealing sustained damage grants bonus damage against vehicles and constructs, but it's that last part that so many people bring up. It refunds ammunition out of thin air. Damage with primary ammo or against constructs provides additional progress. Now, upon scoring multiple hits within 6 seconds, this will grant us 40% increased damage against constructs and refills 10% of the magazine from thin air. This is really not something that I deem necessary. Do I have a few roles with Deconstruct on other weapons that are pretty cool? Yeah, I've got a Raw Sarago with Deconstruct and rewind rounds. And yeah, you can lay on the trigger for an extended period of time. The title though, I wouldn't go out of your way to get that. Again, the big selling point for me is the destabilizing rounds. For that subclass synergy, or in the least, just give yourself an outright damage buff. Now we also have 2 origin traits to choose from. First, we have the Guardian Games origin trait called Classic Contender, which reads that final blows of this weapon grant class ability energy. And this appears to be around 5% of your class ability energy back per kill, which is pretty nice. You're spreading those kills out, guys, and if you're leaning on something that really requires your class ability, whether it's proccing more rifts, maybe you're doing something like Wormhusk, or perhaps we're in close proximity of enemies and we're rocking a perk like Dynamo, and we're just trying to get our super back as much as possible. This feeds into that. Now, our other origin trait is Hake Breach Armaments, which reads that the weapon deals increased damage against vehicles and constructs. Now, this is a decent origin trait, as it's got a buff this season, and it works on more types of constructs. Again, a lot of people don't really go out of the way to use this origin trait, but it does work on things like barricades, strand clones, even void oversouls. I think most people though are going to choose Classic Contender though, just for that class ability energy back. Now, in terms of PvE performance, against Carl, we're dealing 1,220 to the body and 1,829 to the head. The base mag of 27, we have a total damage of 49,383 and a DPS value of 22,787. Now, when we compare this to other energy SMGs, Precisions sit at 21,569 DPS, Adaptives are at 22,930, Lightweights are at 24,158, something to keep in mind when Recluse returns to us. But yes, the title's DPS isn't the worst, but definitely falls behind other SMGs, especially Lightweights. The question is how does it feel actually in practice? Most notably, that destabilizing rounds repulsor brace roll. I think it performs pretty well, guys. I really enjoyed this gameplay loop of killing an enemy, applying volatile, then killing another enemy affected by that volatile, whether that's from putting a bullet in their head or yet from another volatile explosion, which will then proc repulsor brace, giving us that void overshield. Then when we start building into Void 3.0, you start to see the other synergy. We've got Echo Cessation, which allows my finishers to apply volatile to enemies, as well as spawning void breaches when we kill enemies affected by volatile. Now, these void breaches grant us 12.5% class ability energy, which again pairs really nicely with our origin trait. You can then pair this with Echo Starvation for picking up an orb of power, or Void Breach will grant Devour for 5 seconds. Then we have Echo Vigilance, which grants a void overshield when killing an enemy while at critical health, just a great means of survivability if you didn't happen to get the debuff off on a target. And then Echo Persistence, which makes our void buffs last longer, most notably our void overshield from Repulsor Brace. Now, you can still pair this with Gerfalcons, or even go as far as to pair it with Echo of Instability, giving yourself volatile rounds on the front end with the title. This allows you to double dip here, guys. So yeah, you can deal with barrier champions in this case. Overall, guys, there's a lot of subclass synergy here that I think you're able to achieve with the title. And I'm starting to look at builds that are going to be most viable in the Into the Light update, and most notably in the Onslaught Horde mode. Now, obviously, dealing damage is very important, but survivability is going to be extremely important in that game mode. You go down and you guys wipe, that's it. So this is making me mix things up in terms of what I'm going to be utilizing in that game mode. And to me, a destabilizing round repulsor brace SMG rocking alongside a Gerfalcon Hunter who's just locking down areas, I think this is going to be fantastic, guys. So apologies, I'm just now calling attention to this SMG. You do have approximately one more day to get this thing before Guardian Games is gone. Good luck, fellas. Again, we'll be watching the second live stream this week, showcasing the rewards that are going to be coming with the Onslaught Horde mode. So feel free to come join us over on Twitch. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.